Oftentimes, I talk about how nonprofit leaders can generate significant philanthropic revenue through relationship fundraising. But I don't often talk about the psychology, if you will, of wealthy individuals, of your major donors. Here's what I can say: they're not all the same. Wealthy individuals are not a monolith. And we're going to talk about that today. That is our focus on this episode. Let's huddle up. Hey, welcome to another episode of Huddle Up with Mark, the Fun Coach. I'm Mark Duncan. Great to be here yet again. Before I get started, let me remind you about the special that's going on right now regarding my relationship fundraising method master course. I'm running a $100 off special through the end of September. The link to more information about that is below. If you're listening to this on audio only, you will see a link in the description for this particular episode that you can also grab and learn more about it. So let's talk about the psychology of wealthy individuals. Because so often we may think that all wealthy people think, behave, and act alike. And that is not the case at all. If you have been listening to this podcast, or if you've ever attended any of my training sessions, or if you've worked with me one-on-one, you know I often talk about my top 5 reasons why wealthy individuals give to organizations and give in a big way. And I'm going to just revisit them very quickly here before I get into the rest of this topic. So, number 5, we're going to go from 5 up, much like David Letterman used to do, right? Number 5 of the reasons why wealthy people give big is because of the reputation of the organization itself, right? It's well known. They trust the organization. Yeah, we can run down a list of large, well-known organizations that are. It makes it easier for them to raise money because they're well-known and well-trusted. That doesn't mean that you can't be that or you aren't that. It's just that you may be doing that on a much smaller scale as it relates to the community that you're serving. But reputation and legacy are number 5. Number 4 is the tax deduction. Not a big reason, but a reason that people give. And it's certainly not the top reason. And many nonprofit leaders, especially those who are starting nonprofit organizations, I think believe that the giving is driven by the tax deduction. And if you take a close look at the tax laws, the people who can benefit from the tax deduction are only people who can itemize, and you can only itemize if you have deductions that are greater than the standard deduction, either for a single person or for a couple. So for an individual, for example, I think it's something like $12,000, $13,000. So if you are deducting more than that, then you can itemize. In other words, if you have given more than that to nonprofit organizations, or you have other deductions that allow you to hit that threshold, then you can itemize. And for a couple, I think it's 28,000, right? So those are things that we don't often think about when we think about the tax deduction aspect of it. But it's number 4. Number 3 is the personal connection to the mission. So if the person that you're soliciting has a personal connection, has been impacted personally because they were a user of your services, or a family member was a user of your services, that is a driving factor for them to give. Number two is it is joyful. The actual joy of giving is one of the many reasons why people give, right? It feels good to them. And so that's one of the reasons why they give. And it's toward the top. Number one reason, and if you haven't guessed this by now, it's because you have asked. The number one reason that they give is because they were asked to give. Just think about that, especially given I'm talking about major gifts now, because they were asked. A lot of many major gifts, most major gifts do not fall out of the sky. It's that simple. So, as we're talking about the psychology, the psychological drivers of wealthy donors, there's going to be a little bit of overlap here. So, as we look at the core psychological drivers of wealthy donors, now we start to dig a little bit deeper than the list that I just gave you. First would be significance and legacy. This isn't about the organization per se, but many wealthy individuals desire to leave a mark beyond financial success. They want to be remembered for their impact, not because they were wealthy. Really important to point out. Control and agency. They want to know their gift matters and will be used effectively. Transparency is important to them, and accountability is important to them in terms of building trust, which is something that you need to do throughout the process of building that relationship. They'll give because there's a sense of connection and belonging. And part of that has to do with the authentic relationship that you build with them so that they stay close to the organization, they stay close to the mission. See, I often talk about transactional versus relational, and this is where it's the most important. They don't want this to be transactional. And if you're treating your major donors in a transactional way, meaning you're only connecting with them when it's time for them to make that next gift, you're not going to see a lot of growth. In fact, you may get to the point where those donors may refuse or decline, rather, to give because you've made it transactional. So that connection and belonging is important to them. Recognition versus privacy. Recognition versus privacy. You really need to lean into this because when you are building relationships and you're securing that gift, how they want to be thanked beyond the letter that you send to them, which you should be sending to them when you secure that commitment. You should be thinking about how they want to be recognized. And if you've developed a strong relationship, you'll have some sense of what's important to them. Do they want that recognition or they want that privacy? And by the way, privacy when it comes to giving, that giving anonymously doesn't mean that it's anonymous to those inside the organization, especially the volunteer leadership, aka the board. Your board should know who all of your donors are, but they should also understand that there are donors that want to be kept anonymous. That means publicly they do not want it known that they made that gift. So you have to discern whether or not they want the gift to be acknowledged publicly or they want to be kept anonymous. But that doesn't mean you keep it anonymous from everybody. I've seen organizations do that where they think, oh, this is anonymous. That means nobody should know. No board members, no. Your board should know. Use the executive director should know, your board should know, and anybody associated with getting the gift that is not the executive director director of development or whatever, what have you, should also know, right? It's you don't want that public. It should not be able, shouldn't be researchable. You shouldn't be able to look that up. And then finally, the personal relevance, which kind of ties to what I was saying before in the list, and that is um, that the purpose of the gift aligns with their own story, or they are have been personally affected by your organization. But here's something that you're going to want to really pay attention to, and that is what wealthy individuals actually value beyond money. First and foremost, impact evidence. They want to see those clear outcomes. They want to know what you're doing. And that's why it's important to stay in touch with them after you've secured the gift. They're going to want to hear those updates. They may not ask you for them, they may not be demanding them from you. But if you are proactive about staying in front of them and keeping them informed, that's going to be important to them. And again, not every major donor, not every wealthy person is the same. But in terms of the psychological drivers, and now what we're talking about as it relates to what they value beyond money, there are similarities there. But every individual is different. Trusted relationship, visionary leadership, and efficiency and excellence. These are all things that they value beyond money. Most of this goes without saying, but if they're serious about being philanthropic, they're also very serious about making sure that there are outcomes that match their generosity. Here are some common misconceptions, though, about wealthy individuals. And I said this earlier. They don't give because of the tax break. That's not a driver. They're not all motivated by naming rights. And they don't want to be sold. They want to be inspired. So it's important to understand that relationships matter. So often, when we're leaning into wanting to secure these gifts, we're so focused on the result, we're so focused on the outcome, and we're also focused on our own discomfort that we forget to relax and be authentic. And when I say that, I'm talking about as a leader, you need to be excited about why you are doing what you do. And you should be excited about sharing that story. Forget about the $100,000 you're going to ask for. And I don't mean that in a way that is dismissive. Resources are important to be able to sustain a mission. Resources are important to be able to take the mission to the next level. If you remember from last week's episode, I talked about whether or not you're an organization that is surviving, maintaining, or thriving. If you're doing these things, if you're leaning into these relationships this way, it will come across as an organization that is thriving, and that will excite them. So think about why you do what you do. Don't be concerned about the gift amount. Don't be concerned about, exactly how you say things, because we can trip up on our own words because we're so concerned. And more importantly, we tend to be intimidated by somebody who's sitting across from us who has significant wealth. They are just like you. They are just like you. They are individuals who wake up every morning and go about their day. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you. They just happen to have more resources. And they're excited about using those resources to invest in something that they believe in. So if you believe in what you do and how you're impacting lives, that has to come across as you're building that relationship with them. And then you need to pay attention to what's important to them about what you do and lean into that. The ask will come. And when it does, you follow the right process and you'll get that gift. But not every wealthy person is exactly the same. These are some characteristics that you may see, may experience, that you should be aware of. Everybody's different. And the relationship with each individual is what you need to focus on. Be authentic as a leader, and that will come across and will encourage and inspire those individuals to give and give in a way that is significant. I hope this has been helpful to you. And as always, this fundraising thing that we do, it's not about the dollars. It's about what the dollars do for the people that you serve. That is what should be driving you and driving your excitement around securing these significant gifts. Thanks. And we'll see you next time.